Holy cow. I spent 3 weeks in Europe working with public safety, and all of the cases that I've been following drastically change. I mean, Brian Laundrie's body's recovered. So what's next there? Larry Millete is charged with the murder of his wife, and Summerwell's parents take a proactive approach to finding their daughter. What's believable, and what should we be posing our questions on? Hello, everybody. It's great to be back in the Profiling Evil studios after a really long flight home from Europe. It was so great meeting with members of the Profiling Evil family in Latvia, Poland, Czech Republic, and Germany. Holy smokes, you folks live in some incredible places. And for the rest of you, I hope that you caught my video on the serial killer Kaspars Petrovs from Latvia. This guy murdered 38 elderly women. The video is worth watching, so please go and check it out in our playlist. And while you're at it, hit the like and the subscribe button and ring the bell so that you receive all our notifications on other videos like this one. So let's get to work. First, the Daybell case. Now that the Idaho Supreme Court has ruled that Chad Daybell's trial is going to take place in Ada County, and remember, that's where Boise, Idaho is located, this high-profile death penalty case is set to move forward. His trial will go forward while his co-conspirator wife, Lori, is being called back into court to discuss competency. This is in a closed hearing, and the outcome will be sealed from release. Have you noticed, like I've noticed, how many closed hearings and sealed documents we're starting to see in these big cases? I mean, through COVID, we saw more and more put into the public spotlight, but now we're seeing the courts start to pull back the reins a little bit as more and more of the true crime community looks at these cases. Well, on Daybell, court officers say that it's all about giving them a fair trial with an impartial jury. The judge feels that he has a better chance of getting an unbiased jury in Ada County, where there's nearly 500,000 people, compared to the 13,000 folks that live in Fremont County. Now, all of this is happening on the heels of Chad's, quote, goddess lover, quote, Lori, being called into court in a closed hearing. What's really important here, folks, is that Judge Boyce ordered the hearing to be sealed, all the information to be sealed. So in other words, kept from the public. That's all of the discovery that the judge feels public release could negatively impact the outcome of the trial. He wants to make sure it's fair and impartial. Well, at the end of the day, prosecutors Rob Wood and Lindsay Blake said that the interest of privacy outweighed public disclosure needs. So you and I are going to be left to speculate on what's going to happen next. But this much we know about the case. Information continues to come out that shows Chad was involved in Charles Vallo's death to some degree. And I say this because of his bizarre phone calls to the mortuary, the fact that he was using a false name immediately after the murder and trying to work out details for the cremation of Vallo's body. His lies in the transcript are apparent when he deceives the mortuary personnel with a phony name, with phony conditions surrounding Charles' death and other factors. Now, none of that was as troubling to me as the notation that he was laughing at times, uncomfortably so, during the phone call. Remember, Chandler Police and the Maricopa County District Attorney indicated that charges weren't filed against Chad because they frankly didn't think they had enough evidence to convict him of conspiring in the murder case. That's a big difference from saying he wasn't involved. Again, the DA said they didn't file because they didn't think they could convict. Well, let's talk about Summer Wells for a moment. We were all taken a little bit back when Dawn and Candace Wells created their own YouTube channel last week. It looks like it's their way of maybe controlling the messaging in Summer's case. It may have been a fleeting moment decision, though, since they've only posted a couple of videos and only one, or a short video, since its launch. But I don't know if you caught this. They have been putting in the last 20 hours or so videos up about their trip to California, and it looks like seeing some Star Wars characters and other things. Apparently, I'm assuming associated with the visit to film on the Dr. Phil show. But regardless, the Wells are continuing to keep Summer in the public spotlight in their own way, and they continue to capture the attention of some news agencies. In fact, let's listen to this news story by WVLT8 News, where Don Wells doubles down on his theory that Summer was abducted from the house. Let's listen to the video, and then we're going to chat about it.
Talking about details in the Summer Wells investigation. He hasn't done it yet until now. Her father is also showing us a path he claims, a little used path, he claims a kidnapper used to abduct his daughter and then disappear without a trace.
Our Erica Lunsford walked that trail with Don Wells and sat face to face with Sheriff Ronnie Lawson in a WVLT exclusive interview.
Now 114 days after the little girl was reported missing. Erica, you've learned a lot. Tell us more.
That's right. Summer's father tells me he believes the trouble started at the basement door, a door he says her brothers often left unlocked and wide open.
And we'd get on them a lot, and so you can't do that, but it just, you know, we'd always find it open a lot of times and stuff, and so we tried to control that, but to know, you know, they couldn't control it 100% of the time.
Don Wells tells me Summer was last seen going to the basement to play with her toys. Her 3 older brothers upstairs, her mother and grandmother in the yard facing away from the basement door, and Don Wells at work.
We don't know if someone was waiting in the basement or if she come outside here and went to the swing. All we know is she went down the basement.
Wells says he believes someone was lurking at the top of the dog trail, just feet away from the basement door. He says the predator somehow managed to snatch Summer, then raced down the steep hill as she struggled.
I guess you guys want to walk down through here?
The trail was not an easy walk. To get down the rugged hill, Wells and I had to hold on to trees. I struggled not to trip or even fall on tree roots.
And you can slide a little bit.
So the dogs kind of came down this trail here?
Yeah.
It's pretty steep.
Yeah. And I didn't know the dogs even had a trail down through here until the police dogs followed it all the way to the road.
Wells says he overheard authorities say search dogs followed Summer's scent down the trail to the road before losing it. He painted a vivid picture of a kidnapping, telling me a neighbor likely heard Summer scream.
I think whoever grabbed her probably had her mouth covered, and I think she was gasping for air by the time she got down through here somewhere, because our neighbor heard a scream, a really funny scream. I think they just carried her to a vehicle and threw her in there and took her somewhere far away from here.
Hawkins County Sheriff Ronnie Lawson has not publicly commented on specifics of the case until now. I asked Sheriff Lawson about Wells' claims. Did dogs follow Summer's scent down the trail to the main road? The sheriff says yes.
The dogs had a pretty good trail, a track for a little while, but then it disappeared, but they lost scent when they come to the road. And sometimes canines, they will lose the scent when it changes different type, where they maybe went from the gravel to the pavement.
And did a neighbor hear a scream?
Best I recall, it's been a couple months ago, I think that was unfounded.
Wells tells me the family home on Ben Hill Road is surrounded by drug dealers and buyers.
You get all kinds, you know, with the drug trade, and we've seen quite a bit of stuff surrounding the meth thing. We've parked our neighbors caught them parked at our road in our driveway in the middle of the night or early in the morning and stuff like that, and run them off, and they get mad and they raise Cain, and we've had quite a bit of problems.
But Sheriff Lawson tells me Wells lives on a quiet street.
I've heard rumors of, you know, there is maybe a drug dealer on that road, but it's just like anywhere. Ben Hill Road is no different than any other roads, and in Hawkins, Sullivan, or any other county, as far as even Knox County. We all have drug problems, but no, that's not that problem. That's not correct either.
It's not like a hot spot.
No, it's not a hot spot, and it's a dead-end road, so there's very little traffic, if any.
Don Wells says he doesn't know why anyone would take his daughter, but isn't shocked by the disappearance of a child.
There's a lot of missing children.
But Sheriff Lawson says children don't just go missing, especially in Hawkins County.
No, ma'am, we don't have any other missing children.
At Summer's Hilltop home, Wells showed me a refrigerator he says Summer played on.
You know, I don't know what else she did, but what in the world is that?
And we walked to Summer's swing.
This is her favorite.
That's her favorite. Yeah, she liked to twirl.
Don Wells is pleading for his daughter's return.
Whoever has her will have mercy, and please let her come home.
Sheriff Lawson says investigators remain committed to finding Summer.
Everyone in Summer's case is still a suspect.
Don Wells tells me he didn't know the dog trail existed until after Summer disappeared.
Erica, you've talked to Summer's mother before as well. She was not a part of this story. Where was she when you were doing these interviews?
Candace Bly was at the home during the interview, but she didn't want to talk and she stayed inside.
What about this, Erica? Does the sheriff still believe that the public can help find Summer?
Sheriff Lawson says he wants people in the Beach Creek area to keep looking for signs of Summer, especially pieces of clothing that could still turn up in fields. Investigators also need help finding that red Tacoma truck seen in the area near the time of Summer's disappearance. It has a ladder rack and white buckets in the bed.
Still haven't found that. All right, Erica, thank you.
Well, in the video, you heard Don explain that he's convinced a predator was waiting inside the house for Summer to return. In his words, the child was grabbed, gagged, and carried down the hill from the house to a waiting vehicle. I want to pause and have you think about the logistics and the planning for something like this to happen. Now, I'm not saying it couldn't possibly happen, but probably makes me question. Think about it geographically for a moment. The house is located about 350 feet from the road. That's a little over the length of an American football field. Now, add to that the house is about 70 feet above the road's surface. An abductor would have to assume a great deal of risk by parking a vehicle on the side of the road and then sneaking up that trail. They risk discovery by passing motorists who would see their parked vehicle. They risk discovery by one of the many dogs or residents at the home. I mean, we heard report after report of when people pulled in, the dogs all barking and bellowing. The distance covered and the steep terrain also complicates matters. Think about carrying out a child who undoubtedly would be squirming and fighting to get away. Add to this the complication of entering the home and hiding in the basement for Summer to come downstairs. Think about the level of incredible patience that something like this would require. It just doesn't make sense to me. Well, after watching the video again, I'm kind of troubled that Don says he was unaware the dog trail went down to the road from the back of the house. I mean, it's his house. Wasn't he aware of that? Lawson says that search dogs did pursue a scent down the trail, losing it somewhere near the road. But a scent of what or who? That's the real question. Now, the elements required in this possible explanation continue to cause me to think that a stranger abduction is less likely. And I haven't given up on the fact that Summer could have wandered off from the house and fallen in a cavity or drowned in a river or creek bed. There were so many rivers and creeks around there and bodies of water. But don't forget that Don stated that a neighbor heard a scream, potentially from Summer. Sheriff Lawson reported that this was unfounded, didn't happen. And remember, Sheriff Lawson said that they continue to look for that red Toyota Tacoma. And I got to end with this. Sheriff Lawson said that no one has been excluded as a potential suspect in the case of Summer Wells. So I'm really interested in your thoughts about Dawn and Candace's publicity effort. Are they helping or hurting things? I mean, are you being swayed one way or another by their public comments? I'm going to be looking for your comments down below on this one, and thanks for taking time to do so. Now, let's jump to Florida and talk about Brian Laundrie. I mean, how weird and climactic did things get in the Gabby Petito case this week? I mean, the word wow would be an understatement. And while you probably want me to jump right into the discovery of Brian's body, I want to step back for a moment and just talk about the Teton County coroner resigning from his hospital job right in the middle of all this big news. If you remember, Dr. Brent Blue announced that he resigned from St. John's because of a conflict with hospital administrators over the use of his own computer at work. Now, he said other doctors use their computers and he feels like he's being singled out. Blue stated, quote, "I'm being prohibited by contract from saying anything derogatory about the hospital. But you would think with all the recent publicity, they would have been honored to be associated with me. Nothing is derogatory. It is just factual," close quote. I'm a little troubled by his comment. I mean, what do you mean be honored to be associated with me? He's doing his job as a coroner. Now, all of this information is rolling out as Blue's 1990 domestic violence conviction resurfaces in the media. If you think back, in that case, Dr. Blue was convicted of reckless endangerment and a breach of peace. That all happened in a negotiated conviction that stemmed from him shooting a .32 caliber handgun at his then wife's car to keep her from driving away. At the time, Blue allegedly stated, as reported in the media, "I can't believe I missed hitting her rear tire." Well, Dr. Blue was originally charged with aggravated assault and battery, but got the reduced charge and has since completed this probation and apparently is now allowed to carry a concealed weapon under Wyoming statutes. Now, before I talk about the discovery of Brian Laundrie's remains, I want to play an episode from Court TV earlier this week with Vinnie Politan. In this, you're going to hear me tell Vinnie that I think Laundrie is probably already dead. The audio is a little wonky and my bandwidth in Germany was a little bit slow, but I think it's kind of important to talk about this. This was a real possibility. Let's watch this video.
All right, folks, switching gears. The search continues tonight for Brian Laundrie. And the question that we have tonight is who exactly is this guy, right? We've seen his picture. We've seen some videos, etc. We've seen all these Instagram photos. But how do you get inside the mind of this guy who apparently is able to elude authorities for at least a month now, right? It's been more than a month. So Fox News Digital interviewed someone who used to work with Brian Laundrie. Here's what that former co-worker had to say. He never came across as the kind of person that would be the killing type, but he did have the tendency to be, I don't want to say the wrong thing and make him sound worse than he already is. He was kind of a guy who would get mad or ticked off pretty quick. And I thought he was a weirdo. Okay, that's an interesting take. I want to give you some more information about Brian Laundrie here. This is from his Instagram, the way he describes himself in his bio. What does this tell us about him? He describes himself as a guy who, I take a hike every day. Bug bites are better than being brainwashed by the media. Nature enthusiast, taking on the van life with Gabs Petito. We've got him talking as well. Here's Brian Laundrie on that van life YouTube video talking about the camping trip.
So, we are right outside Capitol Reef right now in a free dispersed camp spot. And we've been lucky so far at all the places we've stayed, but I'd say this is one of the best so far. Since we left New York, I've only set up my hammock once, and now we're all the way in Utah, and luckily enough, I was able to set up my hammock in one of these trees.
Okay, That's what he sounds like when he talks, at least when he's talking on the van life video. We know what he sounds like when he talks in the middle of a domestic violence incident. We've shown that to you. What you may not have seen, though, is some of his artwork from Instagram. Let's take a look at that. Again, these are pictures by this man. Who is he? Who is Brian Laundrie? You know, this is some of his artwork. He's an artist. He does yoga. He's doing this van life trip. He's a bit of a weirdo, according to someone that worked with him. And that one's a little interesting right there. So let me bring back in our special guest joining us, retired FBI Special Agent Bobby Chacon, retired police commander, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King. Mike, who is this guy? Who is Brian Laundrie, based on what we know?
Yeah, I think we're learning more every single day, and that's the beauty, I guess, of what social media has been able to bring to the table. But here it is, a guy who was pretty much a nobody going to high school, seemed kind of a recluse. His buddies said he was a good guy, but he didn't get really involved, wasn't a guy that would get into conflicts. But we see this in the relationship, that more and more information is coming out that he was a person who liked control and wanted to be in charge, and yet he did so very passive, aggressively. Everything we see, we learn that he does have some skills as far as the outdoors, but we see a real egotistical side of it as well with his drawings and other kinds of things. And much of it has a really dark connotation. And you know, we've seen pictures with blood and gore in the photographs, questions about the kinds of books he's reading about serial killers or other kinds of things. So we start to see the secret side of his life emerging, not the public side you get to see when he's talking to police officers like right here, not even the private side where he kind of shares his kind of goofy ideas and thoughts. The secret side starting to really emerge as we learn more.
Bobby Chacon, how does Brian Laundrie compare in terms of a profile with some of the other fugitives and criminals that you've tracked through the years?
Well, I mean, he's much less sophisticated. This guy is not Eric Rudolph, who evaded us for years. He's not Israel Keyes, who was the last serial killer that I worked while I was with the FBI. I mean, he's just a kid. He's a dopey kid. He probably didn't have much control in his life. He wasn't very popular in high school, and he gets into a relationship now where he can be a bully that he could never be before, and he can be controlling. He probably didn't have a lot of experience in relationships, and he exercises this control over her, and he becomes basically a bully because he can, because he's not with somebody that's stronger or independent. And so, you know, that side of him comes out. And I mean, he's young and he's not sophisticated. I think it's ludicrous to kind of make him out to be anything more than he is. He's not a master criminal.
Let me ask you this, though, Bobby. Let me ask you this. We're looking at that Moab video. I mean, he was able to, in that situation, basically make himself out to be the victim of domestic violence.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, he's skinny. He's not a very big, imposing guy, right? And and the cops kind of, I think they made a few mistakes in playing it the way they did, in letting him kind of control the conversation and control what was being said in the narrative. But beyond that, I mean, the people that are in that situation, people that are controlling, they do get very manipulative. They do get very coercive like that. So I think that's what you see. I think had he come. Of course, a different set of police officers, things might have turned out differently. But yeah, no, I don't think he's a mastermind. I don't think the fact that he's been on the run for a couple of weeks, even a couple of months, makes him any more sophisticated. He simply disappeared for a while. That's very easy to do in our society these days, particularly in days where everybody's wearing masks or holed up and people aren't traveling as much. I don't think this kid is very sophisticated. I think he's going to get caught eventually, and he'll face justice.
Mike King, how do you think he's getting along? Do you think he's interacting with people sort of anonymously, and using maybe a fake name or whatever, or do you think he's basically just keeping to himself?
Yeah, I wonder if he's not just keeping to himself, or he may be deceased. We just don't know this. I mean, that's pretty risky to go out. He is even in that reserve. There's little chance that he's alive and still moving around, according to all the experts there. I guess the thing that really troubles me is I agree. I don't think he's very sophisticated. And I wonder if he were turned down a little more, Vinny, if we wouldn't see him emerge a little more quickly and start to socialize, because he's done it too much to his life. He's going to return to what he did. The stripes on that that zebra are going to return and be the same.
Mike King joining us all the way from Germany tonight. Bobby Chacon out in Hollywood. Great to have you both on the show. We really appreciate it. We'll see you again real soon.
Thanks, Eddie.
Thanks, Vinny.
Still ahead.
Well, of course, the biggest news of the week is the discovery of Laundrie's remains in the Florida Nature Reserve Park. In an odd and unfolding set of circumstances, Laundrie's parents were seen a day before talking to police. Some people were speculating, based on body language, that the parents were receiving bad news. Well, that was confirmed the following day when law enforcement announced they discovered Laundrie's notebook, a backpack, a dry bag, and some clothing. But most importantly, they recovered human remains. A day later, the FBI confirmed the remains were positively identified through dental records to be those of Brian Laundrie. Now, I've received a number of emails from you asking what remains were recovered and what evidence can be gleaned from the recovery of this evidence. This is a pretty tough question to answer because, frankly, I don't know what body parts were recovered. Now, we can assume that all or portions of the skull were recovered, or at least investigators found enough teeth to make the identification. If the whole skull was recovered, it's possible to see if there were any blunt force trauma injuries or things like a bullet hole or some other evidence of a suicide or a homicide. Injuries from predation would also show on the body, and a forensic examination of the bones will show whether those injuries occurred before or after Brian's death. Is the preying of an animal on another animal, or in this case, a human being. This occurs in the act of attacking or plundering. And it appears from news reports that only some of the body parts were recovered, so they probably were spread around a little bit. Predation would explain the scattering of hard tissue and bones. Animals tend to drag off parts of the body as they consume it. Nature itself can displace the body too. In this case, we know that the water levels were high and then receded. So there's movement in the water. Laundrie's body could have been dispersed and moved around by water as it changed in its depths. Now, in a case like this, you can plan on investigators forensically examining Laundrie's computer, his mobile phone, burner phones if they know about them, and things like social media accounts. Let's not forget, they also are going to be examining the crime scenes and the disposal sites, places where Gabby was discovered, for instance, the Gabby stolen van, the location where Laundrie's remains are recovered, and any other relevant site. Those are going to be carefully examined by crime scene investigators, as well as, when appropriate, archaeologists who will focus on severely decomposed remains. Now, keep in mind, both Gabby and Brian were probably exposed to the elements for nearly a month. Forensic entomologists are going to study the insects found at a crime scene, whether those bugs are alive or dead. These bugs can reveal where a crime took place. They can tell us things like drugs, if drugs were taken before death. We're going to see things like forensic graphologists who study all of the information contained in Laundrie's notebook. Were there suicide notes, confessions, paintings or drawings, anything of evidentiary value? And certainly there's going to be a thorough autopsy performed to bring understanding to the cause of death. So the weeks and months ahead are going to be really interesting. And my hope is that law enforcement will continue to share information about when and how Brian Laundrie died. Most importantly, like you, I'm hopeful that there's going to be some kind of a declaration in that notebook that will bring clarity to this case and perhaps some understanding to the surviving parents. I said parents, and the global community, those folks that have championed Gabby Petito's case. Well, before I leave this topic, I'd like to know your thoughts on one other thing. I've talked about it a little bit in other videos. What are your thoughts on the social media influencers and their involvement in cases like this? I mean, think about it. Personalities like Dog the Bounty Hunter or John Walsh, did they help or hurt? Dog the Bounty Hunter was convinced that Laundrie was hiding around Fort DeSoto Park or possibly down into the Caribbean. There were some sources that suggested that these media experts were criticizing law enforcement. John Walsh was reporting that his sources were telling him that Laundrie was on the Appalachian Trail or down in Mexico. All the while, people were questioning why law enforcement was in the park, the place where Brian's remains were apparently found. Well, then there's the YouTubers, folks like me that express theories, and podcasters who joined in on the mix. What's our motivation? What's their motivation? Is it clicks and views, or is it finding Brian Laundrie? Now, I'd like to think it's about helping law enforcement, but I'm asking because it's also an opportunity for me to do a little self-critiquing. I'm going to be looking for your comments below, and some of you have already shared your feelings on other videos, so thanks for weighing in on this one. Now, Larry Millete. A huge week in San Diego when Chula Vista police arrested Millete for the murder of his wife, Maya. Prosecutors say that Larry killed May when he realized he couldn't stop her from divorcing him. According to the arrest affidavit, he tried coercion, physical, emotional, and even spell casters before he ultimately, allegedly resorted to murder. This 8-page arrest warrant lays out their case and paints a picture that Maya didn't leave on her own accord, nor did she have the financial means to do so. In fact, it points to computer searches that Maya was conducting where she was looking into what child support payments she could expect from Larry if they went through a divorce, how she might support her family on the income that she made, and where they might live. The arrest affidavit also showed where Larry Millete at the same time was conducting online searches for drugs that would incapacitate someone, things like date rape drugs. There were references to controlling and stalker-like behaviors, including times when Larry would show up at her work. The affidavit clarified a previously unsubstantiated claim that Maya had had an affair. Then things got a little more bizarre when Larry Millete started emailing spellcasters. He was doing it daily, trying to get them to place hexes on May that would cause her to become dependent upon him. When those hexes didn't work, he started ramping up the demands and asked that there were physical elements that would require her to be dependent upon him. And he even went as far as requesting broken bones. Well, just days before Maya disappeared, she texted one of her friends and told her that she was filing for divorce whether Larry liked it or not. Now, it was clear that this was not an amicable situation. The warrant revealed that Maya also told a friend that Larry had choked her at one point, even to the point that she passed out. Larry Millete has pled not guilty to the charge of murder, and his attorney is going to be filing some documents soon trying to reduce his bail so that they can begin working on his defense. The status of the children's unknown, and although we've had Mary Chris and her husband Richard, this is Maya's sister, on Profiling Evil in the past, I haven't talked to him for a few days to find out what's happening with the children. But I want to just commend Mary Chris and Richard for the weekly searches that they've conducted in looking for Maya since January. They have traveled thousands of miles, and in all of those searches, according to them, Larry has never participated. Now, in kind of a mirror case, let's jump over to Salida, Colorado, and wrap up as we talk about Barry Morpheus' case. Big news this week as the prosecution announced the departure of lead prosecutor Jeff Lindsay from the 11th District Judicial attorney's office. Lindsay accepted a job in a neighboring district. And while this is undoubtedly disappointing to District Attorney Linda Stanley, it's not the end of the world, folks. Criminal cases like this have numerous attorneys, and there will be adjustments made. Perhaps Lindsay will tip his hand why he made the move in the coming weeks. We'll wait and see what happens there. But I would suspect right now the defense is wishing that Barry's murder trial could be held a little sooner than May of 2022 now, especially given the fact that the prosecution is reeling a little bit from this sudden change in leadership. But all of this challenging news was sidelined when Morpheus' defense team lobbed another round over the bow of the prosecution's boat. The defense notified the prosecutor's office that they intended to sue the investigators for false arrest and defamation of Morpheus. All of the allegations come from the discovery of information, and in particular, a partial fingerprint that they are linking to a suspected sex offender. This was found on Suzanne's vehicle. Now, experts are remarking in news articles that it appears to be a tactic by the defense to, quote, chill the effectiveness of law enforcement, close quote. It made me think back to a personal experience I had in court many, many years ago. I was testifying in a murder case. I was a young investigator, and suddenly the defense started attacking me, my personality, and my investigative strategy. It was really frustrating and painful at times. The prosecutor skillfully cross-examined me, and he clarified my techniques. But I was fuming, and after the trial ended, the prosecutor pulled me aside. I was really angry about the treatment that the defense attorney had put me through. Then I learned a valuable lesson. The prosecutor taught me something that I've watched play out many times throughout my career. It seems the stronger the prosecution's case is, the greater the need is for the defense to discredit the police officers, their testimony, and their evidence. In essence, try to shoot the piano player rather than the composer. Well, this has been quite a marathon today, folks. Thanks for supporting us. I mean, it is really great to be back home in the Profiling Evil studios. I'm really looking forward to choir practice and the Ask Mike Anything on Monday night. In fact, I'm going to have, just for a couple of minutes, a special guest on, Brian McKenzie's mother, to talk about the recovery of his body and some of the things that she's got going. You're not going to want to miss this one. And I hope you'll take a moment and, again, please hit that like and the subscribe button and ring the bell so that you get all of our notifications on videos like this one. And folks, I'm back in America. I'm grateful for the chance to have spent nearly a month in Europe, but I'm really looking forward to seeing you soon at the next crime scene.